So, welcome to People, Passion, and Purpose. I'm really excited today to be with Susan Grundy, who wrote a memoir about her and her life with her sister and her parents. It's called Mad Sisters. Welcome, Susan, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Shirley.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I read the book and I loved it, and I related, to practically everything. So for me, it was a really interesting book to hear what you have to say and how you describe your relationship and what happened to you and with your parents and your sister. So I was just wondering, maybe we could start with a little bit about what the book is about, and then we can go into a little bit about your sister and her evolution of her illness, of her mental illness.
Sure. Basically, the one-liner about Mad Sisters is it's a memoir about a caregiver's struggle to break through the barrier of mental illness in search of sisterhood, and literally, in this case, sisterhood with a sibling. That's the one-liner. What the book's about. It covers 55 years. And there are two timelines in the book. In each chapter, there are two timelines. So I start off in, I'm going to date myself, but 1962 or something, when my sister saves me from drowning, when we're 5 and 8 years old. And then it ends in 2021, 2022. That's the end of the book. But each chapter also starts, the ending is in this timeline. It starts in 2019. So you have two timelines going. One starts in 1960s and the other one is 2019, and they converge towards the last 50 pages of the book to be in the near present.
Yeah. I like what you just said about, your search for sisterhood. Mm-hmm. That's really nice. That's really interesting because I guess as I was reading the book, I saw that you have a sister and you wanted her to be your sister, and that was always very challenging. So
well, the irony is that before she was ill, and she was ill at a very young age, at 13, we weren't really close. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have said, oh yes, my sister. We were not like glue, and we were night and day, Mutt and Jeff. So it's funny that I spent so long looking for sisterhood because I never thought we were close to begin with.
Right. Maybe you took it for granted, or maybe, I don't know,
I don't know. In some ways,
young, maybe, I don't know.
The illness almost brought us closer, but I have to say it took a long time for me to feel that I found that.
Yeah. Well, you worked through a lot of stuff during the book, which I think people will really be interested to read, whether you are a caregiver or not. It's a really great book for people and easy to read for people to understand what caregivers go through, So, I think you express yourself very well in the book.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Hope so.
So when we talk about your sister and her mental illness, you just mentioned that it started at 13. Mm-hmm. So what was that like for you, if you can go back and remember to give us an idea?
Yeah. Of course, it's ingrained in me because the family blew up. I was 10 years old. But the actual scene, I'll have to say, for a 10-year-old, I pretty much blotted it out of my memory. And writing the book really forced me to go there and be there, especially that evening when she had her, massive psychotic breakdown. And memory, how much of it is me filling in the blanks, but I'm pretty sure it brought back things that actually happened because it was a very difficult scene to write. And I, of course, editing it like 20 million times, I had to go over and over it like a wound. But that was, it was in a way out of the blue, her psychotic episode, but I believe there were some signs that it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she, part of the reason we were so different growing up in those first few years is she was just this perfect child. She was absolutely perfect. I was the one who was, always dirty, messy, had very curly hair, out of control. Hers was very neatly combed, and she was a parent pleaser, high achiever in school, the perfect child, too perfect. Mm. And I believe there were some report cards from teachers sort of questioning that.
Right.
But if you have a perfect child and the other one is a little, maybe has more energy and gets into trouble, maybe you don't question their perfect child.
You're right.
But her breakdown happened quite suddenly.
Okay.
We'd moved to Montreal from Toronto, which was a hard move. We moved from a suburbia, Etobicoke, which wasn't even, there were still fields in those days. And we moved to Middle Westmount, which is a really hard transition in the 60s. And Nancy, the curriculum was behind here in Quebec. So most people were put back a grade when they came from Ontario. She wasn't. She was in grade 7. And we also arrived in January.
Right.
Yeah, just terrible time.
Yeah. So there was a lot to deal with.
Yeah, a lot of pressure. So her achieving, she had to work even harder.
Right.
And her breakdown was just, it almost seemed overnight. She had insomnia one night, and the second night she couldn't sleep, and she woke up. I woke up hearing her screaming, and she was having very severe hallucinations. Which I would like to say is, to my knowledge, she has not really heard voices, had hallucinations since.
Okay.
So the label that was given to her at 13, which is of course schizophrenia, stuck with her. It's still in part of her diagnosis.
Okay.
And honestly, I'm not sure it's even accurate.
Right.
If we should be even using these labels in the first place.
Right. Because it seems to have changed over time. And in the book, to me, when I was reading it, it seemed like every so often, or, as things progressed, there was something new happening. She was showing another sign of something, So it grew, it changed, it evolved, And so I was just wondering, as such a young child, watching your sister, go through this or have this happen to her, and it really happened to your family. How did you handle that as a young girl?
There's a scene that my publisher likes where I'm talking to the adults, and my legs are crossed, and I'm being almost like my sister before her breakdown, like, oh yes, the cork came off the bottle. I was just repeating stuff I heard from the adults, and I seemed to be handling it. I did handle it very well, almost nonchalant. And even starting to write the book, I've always resisted writing this book because I really didn't think I had enough to say or anything to say. I mean, this happened. This, terrible thing happened. I believe that in hindsight, I can see that I really did block out a lot.
Okay.
And, we didn't engage in family therapy. I think we had one session, but more or less there wasn't that. And as new symptoms arose, as you were saying, my sister, like she came back from the hospital the first time, I call her a zombie sister. She was literally drooling. She was on a horrible cocktail of medication, just Largacto, liquid Largacto, God. And it would just, she could barely walk, and she had this look of, a glazed look in her eyes. So I called her imposter sister.
Right.
And interesting that I spoke to an old friend recently who knew me from high school days. And he said, you never talked about your sister. You never talked about her. You never brought her up. So she kind of, that imposter sister, I think, what is not discussed does not exist.
Okay.
So although she was very much in my life and I was trying to help at home, outside of it, it just became sort of a blank part of my life.
That's so interesting. So that, like that blankness, now you wrote a book. I wasn't going to get into the book so soon in our conversation, but it seems like now's the right time.
Okay.
Like your book, what made you want to write this book?
I did not want to write this book.
Oh, so why did you write this book?
I resisted writing this book because, everyone has always said to me, because my sister's actually a very witty, she has a great sense of humor. There've been a lot of experiences she's been through and with me together. And people say, well, write this book. And I resisted it. So number one, I wrote another book. I think that's important. I wrote one book, which is enough, because I didn't used to write, right? This is something that came later to me in life. Right. And I wrote this book, and I found a publisher for it, so I felt like, okay, check, bona fide. You're now an author. You are at least qualified, maybe, to look at writing a second book. And I thought, in the back of my mind, is it the book about my sister? Is it this memoir I want to write? And I was still struggling with it until one day, I think we had a huge argument, and it's us. It's not my sister. It's us, our sisters arguing, and I'm probably trying to do too much for her, and she's pulling back and push-pull. And I just got so mad that I came home and I rushed up to the laptop and I just these 2,000 words poured out of me.
Wow.
And I have never been able to write with such flow.
Right.
And even the first draft, I sent it to my kids and to my husband, and and it worked. And it's actually the opening scene of the book. Right. So I actually kept it. I mean, it's been edited, but so I thought, okay. And I think the important thing is it didn't depress me. I was worried about writing. I would feel, a little, this is depressing material. It's going to bring me down. Although the first book I wrote is rather dark.
Oh, really?
I guess I like write, but it's fiction.
Right. No, this is real.
And this is real. This is the story. But I didn't feel depressed after writing the scene. I felt, I don't know, I can't say I felt relieved, but I felt kind of good. And I realized, okay, this is the book.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
It's the book.
That's what I wanted to know. Like, what was that moment that you were like, okay, this is going to be my next book?
Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling it. My skin is going goosebumps because it was the book.
Okay.
And I will write another book.
Yeah.
But, maybe people are saying something light, please. Although this book has a lot of levity in it. There are moments.
I didn't find it so heavy.
No.
I did not find it so heavy.
I'm glad.
I found it very easy to read. And I didn't find it heavy. I just found it, parts of it are very sad, obviously, and, frustrating. But at the same time, it's about your relationship. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes, for people who, again, are not caregivers out there, everyone is in relation to other people. Mm-hmm. And so there's always fighting. There's always back and forth. There's always struggles. So this is just your struggle with your sister who happens to have a mental illness.
Exactly.
And you don't, but it's still about a relationship. Mm-hmm. So, and the struggles in a relationship. So, it's really for everybody, and it's very easy to read. So that was interesting. That's what I wanted to know. And then I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about the process of writing the book.
Mm. I still, and I just went through an edit of what you read. So I've been through quite a process the last month of 8-hour days. The process of writing the book, well, the 2 timelines came to me right away, because in the first, that was easy. Mm-hmm. And actually, I think that's a really important part of the book, because it shows how the narrator, myself, is carrying the weight from the past. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a bit of a shock to go from, Susie and Nancy sitting by the edge of the pool where she just saved me from drowning, from the 60s to 2019. We're in a clinic waiting to see her psychiatrist, who's been taking care of her for like 40 years. It's like, oh, how did this happen?
Yeah, you need history. So,
and you see right away the sister dynamic between us. And, it really did flow, I have to say. I mean, it took me a while to write in terms of process, and timelines, were important.
Mm-hmm. And for yourself, what did you experience while you were writing it?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, there were some uncomfortable scenes, like the night of her breakdown. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's been cathartic. Mm-hmm. But I have to admit that when I finished writing it, and that was a couple of years ago, there's still, I had reached some epiphanies, really important realizations, but I hadn't completely carried them out in my behavior. When you first, awareness is the greatest agent of change.
The first step.
But I hadn't yet I hadn't put it in action. I was still falling back into these old roles of being, and especially of a caretaker, caregiver. So not that I'm not still a caregiver for her, but I don't even like using that term because she can do so much on her own. But yes, I mean, if she needs an advocate in the healthcare system, oh yeah.
Right.
She, that's important. I would need that too. We all need that. So, I did go through, as I said, I had to rewrite. Actually, I rewrote the ending.
Okay.
Because I had not shown enough about my change of behavior.
Okay. Here comes a cat.
There's
Sorry.
Lucy. Okay.
That's okay. I love it. Yes. So you did have to rewrite the end a little bit, you said.
Completely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It was a complete rewrite. I cheated. I originally had an epilogue of 2 paragraphs saying, "Yep, I found sisterhood, or as much as I could." And actually, and so I have to say that it continues, and it will continue to continue. Right?
Yes, exactly. It's never ending.
This is not it was hard to end because
you have to show that it's not ending.
Yeah, and she's been in the hospital twice since. I ended it with a hospitalization, and she's been in another one. So I mean, it's
So that's
might I say that's, I think, very much drug related too, medication related.
Mm-hmm. That's a whole other story.
That is another story.
That's another story.
It certainly is.
That's another story.
I have some thoughts on that.
Oh boy, yeah. So it's a never-ending story, but you were able to tell us the story. Mm-hmm. So, and the process was cathartic for you. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't want to assume, but it seems as if it helped you think through things and helped you remember what you went through with her and your family, and getting it out on paper is a good thing.
I have to say, I don't think my sister has changed, and why should she? This is about me and my journey.
Exactly.
And I have to say that on this last hospitalization, which was just a few months ago, I always complain about her phone calls. Mm-hmm. In the book, you'll see, it's phoning again, take care of this. When she was in hospital this time, I can't tell you how much I missed those phone calls. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
I did. The tears are coming. And so writing the book has helped me. Like I say, it really is true. It's like I've been able to find sisterhood. For my sister, I think it was always there, and she's the big sister.
Yeah.
Which is a certain dynamic as well, I think.
Yeah. So the book is about being a caregiver.
Thank you.
And being a caregiver is really huge, and a lot of people don't understand what it really is about. And there's a lot of feelings that many of us, relate to. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can find another word for caregiver, but. What are some of the emotions that you've struggled with over the years as a caregiver?
That's a really important question. I certainly struggle, and I still struggle with, it might sound strange, but differentiating between being selfish and self-care. Mm-hmm. It all tends to go in the selfish thing. So what happens is I tend to err on not taking care of myself because I feel it's selfish. Mm-hmm. I tend to not ask for help from people who are close to me, especially partnership, because I've been taking care. Mm-hmm. I've been taking care. I don't, so there's this kind of discord in me to really understand. It's slightly distorted, I think, and I've had to, and I still have to struggle with that.
And so when was it that you were like, oh my God, I have to take care of my sister? What made you feel that way? And how did you get into that role of taking care of everything in her life and totally controlling her life, basically? Because that's what we do. And when we're like over caretakers.
Well, we were talking earlier, some people run away. Mm-hmm. Some people don't. And I think I've always been a giver. Mm-hmm. Just in terms of as a little child before she was sick, and our family was a little serious sometimes, and I would always try to create some kind of joy and dress up in like the adult coats when I was like 2 years old to make people laugh. I just remember doing that, making people laugh, and especially in our home environment, which was somber.
Right.
And when she was first sick, I wasn't taking care of her because as far as I was concerned, she was going to be fixed and she was going to come back.
Okay.
The real sister was going to come back, and that imposter, was going to like vanish. So I was taking care of my parents then.
Mm-hmm.
My mother especially was, I would hear her sobbing behind her closed bedroom door. That's very disturbing for a young child. And my father, obviously, I think he went into a depression. So I was taking care of them. My sister, during that period, so that was my adolescence, she was in and out of hospital so much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really see her.
Right.
I wasn't allowed to see her until I was a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
But what really happened was when I was, here comes Larry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Larry.
When I was, they want attention. They want me to take care of them.
Right, exactly.
When I was in 25, my sister was 28. She'd been in and out of hospitals, but she ended up being transferred from 4 East at the Montreal General, to the Douglas.
Mm.
And that was the first time going to the Douglas. And it did sound like I don't want to say death sentence, but let me say death sentence, because the stigma and my parents were, of course, in those days, you didn't question doctors. Not that we should question doctors, but I think we're allowed to now.
Yeah.
And so she went into a locked ward for 13 years, which the doctor at the Douglas recently told me, he said, I thought that was a typo. 13 years? We didn't know it would be 13 years at that time. But my father had a job opportunity in Europe. Mm-hmm. He was kind of being forced out of his position here. So it was either retirement, take the job, and they took it. Mm-hmm. So they moved to Germany. And that was really when it kicked in, that I was the point person.
Right.
And even when they came back and for visits, and eventually they retired, but they always lived in England 5 months a year, I was still the point person and then I became, of course, taking care of them. Mm-hmm. And my sister. Mm-hmm. But I had a number 1 card, a virtual I would give out to people.
Right.
A ticket.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that in the book. So that's how you handled everything.
Yeah.
You gave everyone a ticket.
Yeah, you get a ticket because they had to take turns, because they didn't all. My sister understood, but my parents didn't. They needed taken care of and didn't understand.
Right. But I mean, just to acknowledge that you still, when your parents left, you still hung out and hung in there with your sister. Like, you didn't run away either.
I didn't leave Montreal.
You were there. Yeah. You were there. So there's something inside of you that said, I need to do this. And
I didn't even question it.
Yeah. Interesting.
And, most of my friends left, being Anglo-Montrealers.
Right.
Or at least moved away, came back. I never left.
Yeah. It seems to me, now that I'm talking to you in person and getting to know you a little bit more, what's beautiful is, what I think is beautiful is so much that you wanted that relationship with your sister. Mm. Like, to me now, like, this book is changing after talking to you, because I'm going to cry because thanks, because this is your sister, it's your blood, and you wanted to have a sister. No matter what your sister was like, you wanted a sister.
No one knows me like my sister knows me.
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel that about your siblings, about your brother. I mean, I only have one too.
Right.
So she's the only.
Yeah. So I find that really beautiful. Yeah. And it becomes more about sisters than it does become about mental illness in a way,
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like there's a little shift happening. It's not so much about, it's about you taking care of your sister who has a mental illness, but you didn't even have to do everything you did. Right. Because we talked about enabling, and maybe we could talk about that a little bit. And then, but the fact is that you wanted a sister.
That's absolutely it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And remember, I never felt I had one even before she was sick.
Yeah.
She was always so perfect.
Exactly.
I would be the one getting into trouble.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
But, also, I wanted to know about the title of the book, Mad Sisters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mad Sisters or Mad Sister?
Plural.
Yeah, Mad Sisters.
Plural.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, because I think that's going to be really insightful.
Yeah, the publisher liked the title right away.
Amazing
so there you
title.
Go. Well, there's the pun, mad.
Mm-hmm. But, there's also the emotion.
I'm angry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very angry. Mm-hmm. In the first chapter, you'll see I'm angry in the scene from when she saved me from drowning. When I'm 5, I'm angry, in the scene where I'm 60. Like and the anger's just grown over those years, and the resentment, the guilt, the push, pull, whirlpool of being a caregiver, and friends, they still call me a saint. And I just roll my eyes with contempt at that, because I'm not a saint. A saint wouldn't get angry.
Okay, yeah.
A saint would be very, accept. And so,
interesting.
So that is, and it works really well. And I think at one point in the book, it's not at the end, it's still when I'm in the midst of anger, but there was a lull in the emotion. And I was with my sister, and I think I wrote something like, for a moment, we were no longer mad sisters.
Right.
Because I didn't see her as being ill, and I wasn't feeling angry.
Yeah.
So we were just siblings. So you're quite right about the sister story in this.
It's amazing. But when I think about the title, I also think about your sister being mad, because she's, okay, there's that word mad, like, let's just say it, crazy, like, the normal, what people think, the name of it, without trying not to stigmatize or anything like that. But then I think your sister is also mad.
Oh, she's terrible. And you see that she's angry as well. Yes, I should say. Thank you for bringing that up. It's really key.
You're both angry.
Her life was ripped away from her at the age of 13.
Yeah.
She spent her adolescence in and out of psych ward. She spent 13 years. Yeah. That wouldn't happen today.
Yeah.
In a psych ward, in a locked ward. She was put in side rooms, injected, hands put restrained, put in a restraint jacket.
Yes. Yeah.
She still experiences stigma from, I see it. I mean, a lot of people, most people are very open, but yeah.
And she takes her anger out on you.
Yeah. And I'm not alone. There's other people as well, but
this book is about you. So she takes her anger out on you. So you've been living with her taking, you've been living with her taking her anger out on you.
Yeah. Well, her resentment, jealousy, of course. A younger sister, she likes to say, "Oh, you have 2 husbands." Well, I haven't had them at the same time, but it's hilarious. 2 husbands, 2 cars. Well, I'd only have 1 car, but I guess because he has a car. 2 houses. Okay, there's a cottage. 2 cats.
She likes to remind you of what you have and maybe what she doesn't have.
Exactly.
And that's anger, and that's what you have to live with.
Right.
So that must have been very hurtful.
Yeah, because I let it get to me.
Yeah. It's hard not to.
But I have to say, her anger, I've noticed too, and there is a medication, which is another topic, but the medication that she's on now really relieves a lot of her frenetic, her thoughts. She's so brilliant. She's super brilliant. And her thoughts are just constantly going. And I find she's on this medication now, which is a last resort medication, which has also given her, I believe, many physical serious illnesses, but it's allowing her to, it's calming down her anger.
Okay.
It's hard to judge. It's so hard. They don't really know. The psychiatrists at the medical field don't really know about these drugs. It's trial and error.
Yeah. So scary.
Yeah.
And it's all drugs,
That's true. Yeah.
But so that takes me on to something else now, because towards the end of the book, you start changing. Like your anger, your resentment, your frustration, it changes, and your reaction changes. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because it's also very interesting, in the evolution of everything.
Well, I receive messages from people that I pick up. And maybe I've received them all my life and I've ignored them, but I guess I started to listen to them. I mean, a social worker at the Douglas accusing me, it felt like of being an enabler.
Right.
Because she was saying, you're enabling your sister's negative behavior. What is she talking about? I'm supposed to be a saint, and then just messages getting from different people. And then I guess, I think I might have reached rock bottom as well. I think I reached a point where I was just so tired and so exhausted, I wanted to quit. Quit what? I don't know. Quit, being a caregiver, and by the way, there is another name for it.
Okay.
I know that for my sister, she would be called the experiencer.
Okay.
And the experiencer and the caregivers are called I forget what, but
something else other than caregiver.
And I think this is very good language. Just like not calling it an illness.
Yeah.
And,
exactly.
mental health
issue
disorder
or whatever. Yeah. We're changing the names.
No diagnosis of disease,
Exactly. Things are changing.
Things are changing. And I don't know, maybe that influenced me as well. A little bit, to see my sister not through the lens of illness.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right.
Just to see her as a person who's struggling with a health issue.
Right.
It's a very different perspective.
Right. And so that changed for you when?
Well, I would say there was a particular moment. It happened to be winter solstice.
Okay.
And, some people say when the veil is thin between our world and the other world. And I just had this epiphany. I was looking at my sister from across the street, not far from here on Sherbrooke Street, and I saw her under a street light. It's dark at 4:30 because it's winter solstice, and I just she was talking to a stranger, and she talks to people, and I just saw her as being. I just was reminded of the sister from way back from 1967. I don't know, something about the way her hair was in the light, and the more I looked at her, and the more I was thinking, well, this is still the same. This is the same sister. This is no imposter.
Right.
And it really clicked. Really, something just clicked. And that's really, I think, when I was seeing her not through the lens of a mental health disorder. So it was pretty recent.
Yeah. I'm happy that happened for you.
And
that sounds like a really good moment.
It was.
Yeah, that sounds like a great moment.
It was really cold out, I have to tell you. It was absolutely
You were freezing. I remember reading it in the book. You were freezing.
And she was manic and not feeling the cold at all. But
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. No, I'm glad that you had that, you're evolving. It's a forever thing. Like we all have our lives that we're all working on, but so it's a never ending thing. So that's beautiful. I wanted to know, so was there anything while writing the book that sort of took you by surprise?
You mean a discovery?
Yeah, like a discovery or something that you felt while you were writing it, or a memory that came up that just sort of, oh yeah, I remember that. Wow, how did I remember that? Or I don't know, anything that clicked.
I think it's almost like, and memories are, they're there. It's not like when I said I kind of blocked things out when I was younger, they were there. I just had to access them.
Okay.
So nothing was totally a shock. I think what's been more of a shock is recognizing the impact that my sister's health struggles and our family dynamics have had on me. Being the responsibility being pushed on me. I forgive my parents. I understand why, and I make that clear in the book. Why they left. But it has had an impact on me that's affected my relationships, my close relationships. Not so much with my children. Thank goodness.
Okay, good.
But in marriage, in close friendships, I mentioned earlier, not sometimes calling something as being selfish when it's not, being a little sensitive to certain things that's a surprise.
Like being so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Like expecting a lot from yourself and being so hard on yourself.
Well,
and always being the giver.
Yeah.
So you never really knew that about yourself until you started. It's all coming to light.
Yeah, I mean, and have always thrown off people calling me, saying I'm a saint, or they might say I'm an angel. I've always said, oh well, I had no choice, but I did have a choice. See, that's the thing, and I know of people who have left, and I chose to stay, and I chose to take on this role, and I would throw myself in a bus to save my sister. Well, would I? Maybe not, but I would do that for my children.
Right.
My sister would be a close second, though. And anybody who criticizes her, watch out. I'm there to protect her. Like, I feel this fire inside of me.
Right. So I guess it's like, would you do it all over the same? That's a hard question.
Oh God, no.
That's
though.
a hard
no,
question.
I can. Yeah, I know it's easy to answer.
Okay.
No.
At this point in the interview, we experienced audio issues, unfortunately, so I'm going to summarize what I said in response to Charlene's final question: is Mad Sisters about mental illness or about sisterhood? My hope is that Mad Sisters contributes to the growing mental health narrative by showing the gaping holes in the public mental health care system, number one, and also the need for a paradigm shift in psychiatric care, because the current drug-based disease model isn't working very well. And finally, the critical role that friends and families play as healthcare partners. Too often, this is an invisible role that is not recognized by the healthcare system. But besides that, on a much deeper level, the story is about my journey as I tag along with my sister on what is an ongoing roller coaster ride. It has taken me a very long time to let go of the drive to save my sister and to recognize that she is strong and capable, that she doesn't need saving. And this brings me to my final point about the importance of family, whether or not you get along with them, even more than close friends and intimate partners. A brother or a sister knows us like no other. They are a portal into ourselves, a huge mirror. I'm grateful that I have learned how to look in that mirror directly and not through the distorted lens of a mental health diagnosis. So in a weird and totally unexpected way, the mental health struggle in our family, for my sister, has been the catalyst that brought she and I closer together, closer than we would have been without it. So thank you, Charlene, for producing this podcast and for being part of this beautiful process.
Thank you so much for joining us today on my podcast, People, Their Passion and Purpose. I was here today again with Susan Grundy talking about her wonderful book called Mad Sisters, coming out in October, published by Ronsdale Press. Have a great day.